please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, let's pull up how the Asian markets are doing at this point in time and the SGX as well. So currently, remember that most of the Asian markets have been on a downtrend, and that continues for today's trading session for, say, the Chinese markets. Remember, yesterday it was a recovery from the lows for most of Asia, but Shanghai is now down over 16% on a year-to-date basis. So that seems to continue for the Chinese markets, and besides that, all of the others seem to be largely mixed. For the SGX, let's see, it is indicating that it could be a little bit of a consolidatory start. We just about ended shy of that 10,700 mark in yesterday's trade. But to tell us more about what the cues and views are this morning, Sonia joins in. Sonia.
Hi Ekta, good morning. Well, you know, the market is clearly in the grip of the bears. I mean, you would have one up day, but that pretty much has been a dead cat bounce if you've noticed in the last few days. So what we saw yesterday as well was volatility, but within a trading range. Now the Nifty closed above the 50-day moving average of 10,694, but what it has done is been trading within this range of 10,650 on the downside to 10,850 on the upside. A lot of defensive stocks have been making new highs and supporting the market. Infosys, HUL, etc. have been at record highs, but stripped of that, a lot of stocks have been in a bear market of their own. In fact, a lot of traders we spoke to yesterday indicated that it was just, you know, a minor bounce that we saw. Otherwise, this market is still in a bear grip. FII sold more than 1,000 crores in the cash markets yesterday. DIIs continue to buy, but in small amounts. About 278 crores is what we saw in terms of the DII buy figure. There continues to be huge outflows from emerging markets in general and India in particular. Brent is also a spot of bother. It's once again back above that $78 per barrel mark, rising this morning. However, the global cues, you know, later today will be quite low because the Dow, yesterday, of course, it was down about 0.5%, but it will be closed for Independence Day on 4th July. Even yesterday, it closed 3 hours before, you know, its actual closing. So volumes have been on the lower side. However, for our own markets, the volatility continues with a downward bias.
Right, Sonia, what about stocks we're looking at today?
Well, in trade today, a couple of stocks do deserve mention. Fortis, where sources say that Manipal TPG have submitted the binding bids for Fortis, so keep an eye out on that. Quality, the board has gone ahead and deferred the buyback, so you know you could expect that stock to be under pressure. There's a cabinet meeting at 10:30 a.m. today where the government may hike the MSP for Kharif crops, so a lot of the agri stocks will be in focus. Talking about agri stocks, VST tillers and tractors came out with their numbers. There was a big drop in the power tiller sales in June to 2,950 units versus 4,099 units. So halving of the sales. In fact, VST tillers has been under pressure for a while now. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Sonia. Thanks very much for that. Take a break now. But up next, we'll get you snippets of an exclusive conversation.
Well, Union Minister Arun Jaitley has slammed the current prevention of corruption law. Speaking at the SBI conclave late last evening, he highlighted that the current law is badly drafted and is nothing but a charter to bring governance to a standstill.
The Prevention of Corruption Act in 1988 was legislated keeping in mind a regulatory regime. It was a pre-1991 piece of legislation. It is one of the most badly drafted pieces of legislation. That law is a charter for bringing governance to a standstill. And I'm glad my colleagues all supported me, where we were able to introduce an amendment in Parliament which took within its compass corrupt decisions to come within the fold of the Prevention of Corruption Act. But honest decisions which are merely erroneous or become erroneous with passage of time to be kept out of it. If that is not done, I would not join the chorus of blaming any decision maker or a banker or a civil servant for any delay in decisions making.
Okay, so that is the finance minister. And additionally, speaking about Maharashtra police arresting officials of the central government-owned Bank of Maharashtra, Jaitley added that the overreach of central and state probe agencies are bothering bankers.
I would also feel that of late I have seen a second problem emerge. In investigating crime or what could possibly be an unfair decision taken, we cannot overlook the federal structure of India. India's federalism has jurisdictions vested in the central government. It has jurisdictions vested in the state governments. Law and order investigation is a state subject. But immediately after independence, an issue of federalism came up. Can the state government then investigate decisions taken by the central government or agencies of the central government? If a state government or a state police was allowed to do so, it would completely upset the federal balance. Now, this is something which was never permissible. And therefore, a central investigative agency was created that if any offence is alleged by a functionary of a central government or an agency of a central government, let that agency look into it. Otherwise, you will have a minister of the central government, a cabinet secretary of the central government, a secretary of the central government being investigated, or a director of a reserve bank or SEBI as an institution being investigated by sub-inspectors of a state police. Now, this is something that federalism cannot permit.
Well, and bankers echoed Arun Jaitley's sentiment on the issue of investigative action. SBI Chairman Rajesh Kumar said that the arrest of the Bank of Maharashtra MD and senior officials came out of the blue and rattled everyone. Bank Board's Bureau, that member, in fact, Mr. Pradeep Kumar, added that the proposed amendment to the Prevention of Corruption Act needs to be passed. Here's an excerpt of that exclusive interaction with Shireen Ban.
We were very encouraged by the speech of Shri Arun Jaitley ji. These were the issues which have been bothering us for, I would say, a couple of months. And particularly the Bank of Maharashtra incident, it just came out of the blue, caught everybody by surprise. And it was totally unexpected and unwarranted and rattled the entire banking community in service or retired. It is something which should have not happened, but now if it has happened, but as Piyush Goyal ji also said, is that it has happened, but it doesn't mean that you stop decision making. It cannot. When the decisions come to the table of the executives, can they say that I am not taking a decision? It does not happen in the real life. And that is.
So you're saying that that hasn't happened yet, and you don't believe that that will happen, or the fear that this is going to lead to credit paralysis is unwarranted?
No, let me clarify it. That as far as the agitation is concerned, in the minds of the banker, it is very much there. And given a choice, probably they would not take a decision, but that does not happen in real life. When we have been entrusted with a certain responsibility to run an organization, when it comes to decision making, then you still take, despite whatever has happened, the decisions which are in the best interest of your organization. And that cannot stop.
Okay, so you're saying that decision making cannot stop, and you're hoping that there will in fact be more that the government will put forward. Mr. Kumar, let me ask you, sir, as a member of the Bank's Board Bureau, and while we await the legislative change that Mr. Jaitley spoke of, and hopefully the message that he sent out will be carried forward to various arms of the government, the investigative agencies, as well as the state governments. As a member of the Bank's Board Bureau, what is it that you would like to see being put on the table to ensure that we don't in fact move to a situation of credit paralysis?
I think the first step is this amendment to be passed with the Parliament. It has been lying in Parliament for such a long time, and I think the Finance Minister himself earlier, when he had visited SBI headquarters when I was there, had promised this will be legislated soon. But I have been retired for more than 2 years now. Still it is under legislation. So I think this legislation has to be passed first, and I don't know, you can't go back in time, but if something can be done in the Bank of Maharashtra case, if things can be reversed, I don't know, with the law of the land, then it will give confidence to the bankers. If you see people on the ground, Mr. Rajesh says we'll have to take a decision, but I've seen that even in SME loans, people are hesitating. There's a crisis of confidence in the system. That has to be, I think the first step is the amendment in the Act. And thereafter, perhaps a message to the investigative agency that you have to go strictly by the law of the land, not by your interpretation. And the law has changed. And unfortunately, in this case, both the government at the state and the center were similar. If there's overreach by the investigative agency, it should have been prevented.
You're still tuned into Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Well, the interim finance minister Piyush Goyal also addressed this SBI Banking and Economics Conclave, responding to a question on India's twin balance sheet challenges. The FM assured that the centre will stick to the fiscal deficit target for the current financial year. He went on to add that there won't be any fiscal slippage either now or in the next 5 years.
We are running a good economy. Our macro economy is strong. The fiscal deficit is coming down regularly, and I assure you, this year there will be absolutely no slippage of fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit will be maintained and will continue in our next term of 5 years to reduce and do better. I'm not being presumptuous or arrogant. I have confidence in the people of India and their understanding that they will vote Prime Minister Modi back to give us good government for another 5 years. And I am confident that this strengthening of the macroeconomy, this ensuring that we have low interest rates, we have low inflation, the current account deficit has by and large been low, save and except the last quarter where oil prices affected it a little bit, but we are still half of what we inherited even on the last quarter. So in every respect, the Indian economy is strong, Indian reputation is strong, Indian credibility of leadership and our business persons is strong. Money is available. I have never found money to be a deterrent when it comes to doing good or doing development. It is we who have to go out, present our case well. Money will not be a problem. In fact, I think even domestically and internationally, people are waiting to participate in the great India story.
Previous NDA government in Parliament had announced that perhaps we can go down to 33%, maybe with some golden shares for the government which maintains veto control. So would you consider this 33% option?
No, there's absolutely no proposal at present to reduce the shareholding of the government below 51%. It will continue to be public sector banks with 51% holding in all the 20 banks which are under the Banking Regulation Act, and there's no proposal at present to change that.
Well, an IDBI Bank's MD and CEO B. Sriram reacts to the bank's potential acquisition by LIC for the first time. Speaking at the SBI conclave, he said that he foresees the latest nuptial between LIC and IDBI Bank creating a potential value. Let's listen in.
The capital is extremely scarce. And how is it that we are going to go first get capital and use that? Largely, whatever capital comes, if you have an NPL of 20%, 25, 30%, it just goes in resolution. But yes, for a sustainable future, I think the long-term strategy in terms of what I would like to sell to potential suitors, you're talking about potential brides, but I think we have to look at potential suitors for ourselves, is something that...
Do you have a choice? Isn't it an arranged marriage?
Arranged marriage, even if it is, then we need to have suitors further on, down the line. You can't have an arranged marriage which sticks on for 30 years. A divorce has to happen. So, in some ways, so I guess we
Is that part of a prenuptial agreement then, that you're going to part ways after a certain amount of time?
I would imagine that as it creates value, any bank, I think anybody would like to take value out of that. But yes, these are not only tough times for my bank, but also tough times for the banking industry at large. I'm sure that over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of work that has happened in most of this. You talked about few schemes, but I would imagine that the schemes are only enablers. It is us as committed bankers who need to see this through.
Okay, a lot of interesting conversation from that SBI conclave yesterday, but all eyes are on the cabinet today as it is likely to decide on the new MSP regime for Kharif crops. Rituparna Bhuyan joins in with what is likely to be expected later today. Ritu?
Well, we all know that the government has been talking about, giving MSP at, 1.5 times the production cost. So that will be today taken up in cabinet. 3 options are being proposed, which will be discussed by the cabinet. For example, there is a market assurance scheme, there is a price deficiency procurement scheme, and a private procurement and stock scheme where private parties also get involved in the MSP process for procurement. These are the options which could be given to states as far as this new MSP regime is concerned. The mechanism that is likely to be used is the A2 plus FL, where all costs are fixed, will be used to basically arrive at the MSP price. However, the cost of land will be kept out. According to Ramesh Chand, whom I spoke to yesterday, average increase in MSP for crops is likely to be between 7 to 8%. Crops like paddy, groundnut, bajra, ragi. So these crops will be basically, we'll see new MSP price being fixed. And according to Mr. Ramesh Chand, who was involved in this process, he told me that, crop to crop, we could see up to 40 to 50% increase in MSP. But in some crops, you could not, the MSP price could remain the same.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that, Ritu. Well, on that note, let's listen to that conversation that Ritu had with Mr. Ramesh Chand, the member of the Niti Aayog, on how the mechanism will impact prices of agri products. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
Because our markets right now are not very competitive, right. So we are thinking of intervening into markets. Right. That we have announced MSP. Right. So how to see to it that farmer get that MSP? Right. So for that there are different proposals. Right. One proposal is that whatever we do in the case of paddy and wheat, and whatever to some extent we have been doing in case of pulses and oil seeds under the price support scheme, we expand that over other crops also. Right. This is one mechanism. The government procures it. Right. Second is that some people also suggest that you think of some deficiency price payment, as MP has tried it on a pilot basis. Yes. So can that be considered? Right. And third is that can we involve private sector, that we have some arrangement with them, that we give you some facilities, we help you in export, we help you in managing
you said A2 plus FL mechanism will be used, plus 50% margin?
Will be announced based on that. Right. Yeah, of course.
So, and this 50% margin, will that add to inflation? Because that is one fear which many people have been raising.
No. It's not that it will add to inflation, or as if this is being done for the entirely in a new way. Right. Like if you look at MSP of wheat, it is already double A2 plus FL. Okay. So, and we have seen that the raise may be, in some commodity it does not even involve raise, but in large number of commodities, it involves raise of 4 to 47%. Right. Average will come around something like 6 to 7% in the price that is to be paid to the farmers.
Right. So the range is between 4 to 40% if you look at individual crops.
Individual crops of Kharif season if you look at. Right. So it just, wherever that increase has to happen. Right. In fact, I will say 0 to 40%. Okay. Some crops there is no increase as per the cost formula. Right. That doesn't mean MSP will not consider increase. This is minimum. Right. Okay, that it has to be at least this much.